The clash between Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't just a momentary flash of political fireworks, it was a thunderclap that echoed far beyond the walls of Congress. The tension had been simmering for days, perhaps even weeks, as Greene's rhetoric continued to escalate, fueled by fringe theories, media stunts, and her relentless pursuit of culture war dominance. But this time, she wasn't facing an empty room or preaching to the choir. She was face to face with a legislator who understood the law not just from a political perspective, but from the ground up, someone who had spent years in courtrooms, defending real people, analyzing real statutes, and respecting the Constitution not as a prop, but as a sacred document. That someone was Jasmine Crockett. As the hearing began, Greene launched into her usual monologue, an aggressive, almost theatrical condemnation of the Biden administration, using phrases like open borders invasion and executive lawlessness with the kind of confidence that comes from never expecting to be seriously challenged. She pointed fingers, made sweeping generalizations about immigration, and accused fellow lawmakers of enabling what she called a total collapse of law and order. She waved around a packet of papers, none of which she quoted from directly, and made references to the founding fathers rolling in their graves. It was the kind of grandstanding her base loves. But this time, her words didn't go unchecked. Jasmine Crockett sat poised, flipping through her own notes, underlining something with a pen. She didn't flinch at Greene's volume. She didn't roll her eyes. She waited, patient and focused, like a litigator waiting for the perfect moment to cross-examine a witness who's just perjured themselves under oath. When the time came, she leaned forward with deliberate calm, her voice measured but unmistakably firm. She began not with fire, but with clarity. "Congresswoman Greene," she said, "I think it's important we get some facts straight for the American people watching." What followed was not merely a rebuttal, it was a methodical deconstruction of Greene's entire argument. Crockett cited the specific immigration statutes that grant executive discretion over enforcement priorities, pointing to Title 8 of the U.S. Code and recent court decisions that reaffirmed the administration's legal authority. She didn't just state that Greene was wrong, she showed exactly how and why. She referenced United States versus Texas, 2023, where the Supreme Court held that the federal government has wide latitude in determining how to enforce immigration law, especially in the context of limited resources. Greene's claim that Biden was violating the law by not deporting every undocumented individual was, as Crockett put it, not only a misinterpretation but a fundamental misunderstanding of how discretion functions in our legal system. Greene attempted to interject with a shaky claim about Article 1 powers being ignored, but Crockett was ready. Article 1 lays out congressional authority, not enforcement mechanisms. She replied swiftly, "What you're confusing is the difference between legislative responsibility and executive implementation. If you want to change the law, propose legislation. But until then, enforcement falls under the executive branch, something clearly established by the Constitution you claim to defend." The air thickened. Crockett's tone sharpened, not in aggression, but in purpose. She explained how laws like the Immigration and Nationality Act, (INA), have always provided discretion to the executive branch. No administration, Republican or Democrat, has ever deported every undocumented person, because it's not logistically possible, nor constitutionally mandated. She added, "You know this, or at least, you should." At this point, even other members of the committee leaned in closer. Greene was on the defensive, flipping pages, muttering under her breath, but Crockett pressed on. She brought receipts, quotes from court rulings, data from nonpartisan legal organizations, and statements from the Congressional Research Service. She wasn't just countering a falsehood, she was delivering a lecture in front of a live national audience. It was legislative cross-examination at its finest. Then came the moment that set the internet ablaze. Greene, frustrated and flustered, accused Crockett of being more concerned with protecting illegal aliens than Americans. That's when Crockett looked directly at her and said, "What I'm concerned about is protecting the truth, Congresswoman, because unlike you, I'm not afraid of facts." The room fell into a stunned silence, and the pause between that statement and the next word felt like an eternity. Crockett continued, "Fear-mongering isn't governing, misleading the public isn't patriotism, and distorting the law doesn't make you a defender of the Constitution, it makes you a danger to it." The words hit like a gavel. Twitter lit up with quotes. Legal scholars praised her articulation. Some even joked that Crockett should teach constitutional law in her spare time. But Crockett didn't gloat. She didn't laugh. She maintained her composure and kept her attention on the issue at hand. That, perhaps, was what made the exchange so powerful. She wasn't playing to the cameras, she was holding the line between chaos and clarity. Greene, visibly rattled, tried to pivot to crime statistics, suggesting that immigrants were driving up violent crime. Again, Crockett came prepared. She cited studies from the Cato Institute, the FBI, and other independent organizations that repeatedly found no correlation between undocumented immigration and crime rates. In fact, she noted, many cities with high immigrant populations experience lower than average violent crime. If we're going to base policy on fear, then let's at least ensure that fear is grounded in reality, not headlines, not conspiracy theories, but real, empirical evidence. Greene's response devolved into interrupting and talking over her, but Crockett didn't bite. She waited each time, resumed where she left off, and continued to build her argument. "I'm not here for a shouting match," she said at one point. "I'm here for the truth. And if the truth makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem, not the American people's." The statement sent ripples across social media, with thousands reposting it alongside the hashtag Crockett crushed it. What followed was perhaps the most stinging indictment of all. Crockett addressed the dangerous precedent being set by elected officials who weaponize misinformation. She spoke about the legal implications of elected leaders spreading lies, invoking the Capitol riots as a sobering example of what happens when facts are abandoned in favor of political performance. We've seen what happens when we let propaganda override constitutional literacy. We've seen what happens when we substitute legal nuance with slogans. It doesn't just make our jobs harder, it puts lives at risk. The gallery, filled with journalists and aides, was silent. You could hear the scribble of pens and the clicking of phone cameras. Greene, meanwhile, offered no real response, just deflection and vague accusations that failed to land. It was clear that this wasn't just a defeat, it was an exposure. The depth of her misunderstanding had been laid bare for all to see. And while many expected Crockett to simply make her point and sit down, she ended with a statement that resonated on a much deeper level. We can't keep pretending ignorance is strength. We can't keep allowing people to dress up confusion as courage. Our constituents deserve better. Our Constitution demands better. That statement echoed like a bell, not only within the chamber, but across the country. After the hearing, media outlets scrambled to get reactions. Legal experts from both liberal and conservative circles called it one of the most legally sound rebuttals seen in congressional debate this year. Editorials praised Crockett for defending the Constitution in its most practical form, through clarity, evidence, and respect for democratic principles. Greene, meanwhile, made no further public comment that day. But what lingered wasn't just the soundbite or the virality, it was the feeling. A collective breath of relief from people exhausted by performative outrage, finally witnessing substance take the stage. Crockett reminded viewers that integrity and intelligence aren't mutually exclusive, and that truth isn't a partisan weapon, it's a civic responsibility. In the days that followed, Crockett's team reported a massive influx of support, emails, calls, even handwritten letters from across the country. One from a retired judge in Ohio read, "You spoke what so many of us have been waiting to hear. Thank you for standing up for the law, not the noise." Another, from a high school government teacher, said, "I played the clip for my students. You've restored some of their faith in this process." And maybe that's the lasting power of what happened between Jasmine Crockett and Marjorie Taylor Greene on that day. It wasn't just a battle of opinions, it was a battle between knowledge and ignorance, between theater and truth, between recklessness and responsibility. And in that battle, Crockett didn't just win, she led. So if you're as inspired as the millions who watched this moment unfold, now is the time to support leaders who speak with purpose and lead with knowledge. Tap that like button if you believe facts still matter. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful moments where truth takes center stage. And don't forget to share this video, because when one voice speaks truth to power, it's up to all of us to make sure the world hears it.